All right, so I am here with the man Drew Manning. So Drew is he's a keto coach, personal trainer, New York Times best-selling author of the book Fit to Fat to Fit Again. You had a show on Lifetime too, I believe, right?
Yeah, season one was on A&E. Season two was on Lifetime, actually.
That's right. That's right. And that was
Yeah,
also called Fit to Fat to Fit, where
correct.
where you had trainers on there that went from being a fit personal trainer. They gained in some cases like 50 pounds in 6 months,
Yeah,
and then they lost
yeah,
the weight. So that was awesome to watch how that played out. So really awesome honor to be talking with you, man. You're someone I highly respect in the fitness industry. You are a straight shooter, which I know people respect about you. I respect about you, and really it's important for people to understand what it's like to be overweight, to be, on the other side of things, because a lot of times I think, especially with social media, people paint a brush of, everyone has six packs, everyone looks good. It's so easy to stay in shape. It's so easy to get in shape. And, what's wrong with you for not being able to get in shape. Right. And,
yeah.
I've been super open with my own personal journey. I lost over 100 pounds myself. I call myself a recovering food addict, even until today. Like those struggles and those addictions are still there. But it's just a process of getting through it every day and making hopefully more good choices than bad choices too. Right. Um,
True.
so I guess I'll kind of let you just start us off and introduce yourself and kind of give the audience a brief history on yourself.
Yeah. So my backstory is I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters. I know, kind of crazy. I don't know what my parents were thinking, but anyways, 11 siblings. I was number seven, and we all played sports. So football and wrestling were a big part of my life since I was a young kid. And so I was always active, which means as a result of that, I was always in shape or fit because of that type of lifestyle that I lived. And because of that, I've never once been overweight. And then fast forward to 2009, became certified as a personal trainer. And here I was, someone who had never been overweight a day in my life, trying to help people who were overweight pretty much the majority of their life. And there was an obvious disconnect because in my mind, I'm like, it's easy. You eat healthy food and a certain range of how much food that is, and you exercise and you do that consistently, and then you are healthy and fit, and you'll see the results. I couldn't understand why my clients struggled to just do that every single day, because for me, it was easy. And so I had one client who was my brother-in-law at the time, tell me, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is for me or for people like me, because for you, it's always been easy. And yeah, I'll admit I was more of the judgmental person, because in my mind, I'm like, you just do it. You put down the junk food, you be disciplined, and you just have the willpower, and you just do it. Why do so many people struggle? And it bothered me. And then when he said that, he's like, you don't understand how hard it is for me. I was like, you know what? You're right. I don't understand. And so I was like, okay, how can I, I was thinking of ideas. How could I gain a better understanding? And then boom, this idea of like getting fat on purpose, as crazy as that sounds, that idea entered my mind, and this light bulb went off. Like, what if you actually did this? And it almost felt like I was being called to do this, because I called family members and friends like, hey, I had this crazy idea. I want to run past you. What do you think? And like everyone was totally in support of it. Like, yeah, you should totally do it. The one person that was against it was my mom, who was worried about my health, of course. But my wife at the time, I was married and she was pregnant. And she's like, and I was more of the health nut. And she's like, so you're telling me we're going to have junk food in the house for the first time? She's like, yes, because she was pregnant and had cravings. And so anyways, got the green light to do it, not knowing what, I didn't expect anything. I didn't have any media connections or marketing strategy. All I knew how to do was, okay, I'll create a website on Squarespace, and then I'll start a YouTube channel and just start posting about it. And then friends and family started following along, and then a couple things happened, and boom, before you know it, the story went viral. Went on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. It was my first show I did. And I was like, what is happening? Like, what? Like, I had no idea. And my website crashed, and all these TV shows were asking me to come on. I did the whole TV outlet thing, got a book deal. The book deal, went great, and got a publicist. And then I had to lose the weight, of course, which was way harder than I thought it was going to be. And so the journey went viral. Wrote a book. The book became a New York Times bestseller. The book turned into a TV show where we had 2 seasons, where we put other trainers through that process. Because here's the thing, I learned so many valuable lessons from that first experience. I felt like people could finally relate to me. People trusted me more, seeing the transformation that I went through, because I was truly humbled. It was one of the hardest, most humbling things I've ever done. And I think because I was transparent about that and showed people just, or I realized just how hard it was and how wrong I was. I think that's where people finally related to me, and I could better relate to them, having gone through that experiment, even though it was crazy, risky. I think people could relate to me finally, because I wasn't just like this robot that just was perfect all the time with no body fat and just had no cravings, right? This doesn't seem human. And so for me to go through that really opened my eyes of just how wrong I was. It humbled me. I was able to develop empathy finally for those that struggle instead of judgment. And that's where the huge game changer that's where everything changed for me after that first experience. And this is back in 2011, by the way.
That's incredible. So let's talk about like the gaining weight process, right? Because I'll be honest, like I'm a former fat kid. I'm a huge foodie. Like food is life to me. I make no apologies for it. Like food and fitness are my two loves in life, right? So initially when you started, were you like, oh, this is going to be so fun, man? Like over the next 6 months, I'm going to be able to pig out and just like eat whatever I want. Or did you like kind of start regretting it like a week or like 2 weeks in?
Well, that's a good question. I was excited. There was this anticipation of like this sense of freedom of like being able to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, is kind of like a kid in a candy store mentality where you're like, oh my gosh, I can do whatever I want to. You're not free to choose the consequences of that, but it feels like this sense of freedom. I remember my first time going to the grocery store and like skip the produce section, go down the cereal aisle, and we have like hundreds of flavors of cereal and soda and candy and chips and cookies and crackers and all kinds of delicious food. I'm like, man, this is actually fun. And then I wouldn't say I regretted it 2 weeks in, but by 2 weeks in, I noticed a difference in just my health, like the way I was sleeping, snoring through, during the night, which would wake me up. And so I was waking up kind of groggy and sleep deprived, not feeling like my best self. And then walking up the stairs, huffing and puffing. I was like, man, this is so crazy how quickly your body can change. And then I wouldn't say I regretted it, but I was like, damn, how am I going to do this for the next 5 months? Like, this is already like, I felt like I was 100 pounds overweight, even like with 20 pounds gained, right? Which I think how much I gained in month one. I felt like I was 100 pounds overweight by that point. But it's funny because people are like, oh yeah, you look normal now.
So what did your weight go from when you started, and what did you like finally end up at your heaviest?
Yeah, so when I did this in 2011, because I just did it again recently.
Yeah. I saw you did it about 6 months.
Yeah, 193 was my starting weight. 269 was my heaviest that I got up to. So not quite 100 pounds, but 75 pounds was in 6 months time too. That was quite a bit of weight.
And how tall are you?
6'1".
Okay, so you and me are about the same height. I'm 6'2". So yeah, like I'm around 195 and I'm lean and feeling good. And I've been as high as like 240 over the past few years, just from having had a surgery and just stopped working out for 4 months or so. So like I don't think people realize like the weight could go on pretty quickly if you stop training, if you stop exercising, if you fall out of your routine. Like it's super, it could swing the other way pretty quickly. If you let it get out of control. So what was like the biggest thing that surprised you when you were going through that process? Were you like more than ready at like month 5 to like start the cut?
Yeah. The first time I was ready to be done with it, I was like ready to get back to my old self. Not so much because I was, had this fat on me. It's because the way I felt. Like it's one thing to be overweight. It's another thing to be unhealthy. Yeah. Right. I think those are two different things. I like to separate that. The fitness industry just puts everyone into a category. If you're overweight, you're obviously unhealthy, which you and I both know can be true, but it can also, like, there are some people that are fit that are overweight. Yeah. So I don't want to, throw those into the same category. It was the unhealthiness of that lifestyle, which really opened up my eyes. The surprises for me were two things. One was how much of our identity is based on our bodies. And this goes for people like me who grew up their entire life in shape or skinny or fit. And then all of a sudden to become overweight, your identity is wrapped in what your body looks like. So for me, I was Drew the fit guy my whole life. And so I kind of had a freak out moment or session where it was like, I need to explain to strangers that I'm not really overweight because it's freaking me out because I'm not really this way. And I need to go out of my way to explain to people like, hey, this is just an experiment. Here's my website. here's my before picture. This is what I normally look like. And I don't even know you, but I just feel like I need to tell you this because my identity was my body. And I think the same thing is true for those who grew up their entire life overweight. They identify themselves, their body, their self-image as their body image. And for me, that was the biggest surprise, was how much of our identity is wrapped in our bodies. And then two, how much of transformation is mental and emotional. We think physical transformation is calories in and calories out. Like, yes, that's a part of it, but the mental and emotional side is way overlooked. And so I realized how much of this journey, this transformation that was happening, affected my mental and emotional state of mind way more than I anticipated.
Yeah.
The last thing that I learned was when I transitioned to start eating the healthy food again, after eating junk food for 6 months, how powerful not only the emotional connection to food is, but the biological connection. Like, I remember those first 2 weeks of eating healthy food, I was like, oh, I'm going to be excited. It's going to taste great. I'm going to, get a 6-pack in those first 2 weeks, like, thinking like that's going to happen. And I just remember how awful I felt those first 2 weeks. I felt so miserable because my body was going through these crazy withdrawal symptoms where it wanted the high that it got from those foods for the past 6 months. And my own body was fighting back against me, this personal trainer, this disciplined person that wanted to be healthy and fit, saying, no, we liked those drugs you were giving us. Like, we want that. Yeah. And so it was really eye-opening for me because I was like, oh, this is what my clients go through when I give them a meal plan and I'm trying to tell them to be perfect. Like, why don't you just put the junk food down and follow this meal plan? I finally could relate to my clients when they would tell me, you know what, I tried and I slipped up this weekend, or I caved in and had this craving and I just gave in and had the soda or whatever it is. And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, the light bulb went off. And I was like, this is why it's so hard for people to switch. And that's where the empathy started to develop. I'm like, it's so much more of a deeper emotional connection to food that we've created, where we eat our emotions, whether we're happy, we're sad, we're celebrating. It's a Friday afternoon, it's a birthday, it's a holiday, whatever it is. Like, there's emotions tied to certain foods for people. And that's where I started to understand emotional eating and develop the empathy for people. And so those were the lessons that I started to learn that were surprising.
That's super powerful, man. Like, I always tell people too, it's like when you've been fat your entire life or overweight your entire life, and now you're trying to make this shift into, living healthier or getting in shape. It's like your identity is so wrapped up in who you currently are or who you've been that to start like making that change over, you almost have to like trick yourself into believing like, okay, I'm not this person anymore. You have to start living out this new identity because like you said, man, so many people's identity is wrapped up in how they look or, their bad eating habits or, really like the negative feedback they've gotten from, the world, right? Like, I mean, I was believing I was a kid. So like in my head, I was always like, dude, you're worthless, you're fat. Like, so I had to break that, man. And I think for people, like it's a process. Like you said, it's not as easy as just, okay, I'm going to track my calories. I'm going to eat less calories, burn more calories than I'm eating, and just flip a switch. Because like you said, there's so much emotion behind it. And I hate when I hear like, especially other fitness people say like, relationships are with people, it's not with food. I'm like, then dude, you clearly don't understand like what it's like to be overweight or understand the struggle behind, having that correlation between like, I had a stressful day. I'm going to go, go self-sabotage and raid my pantry, even though I know I shouldn't do it. And even though I know tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up hating myself, I'm just going to go do it because I have this like, this rush, this endorphin rush that I have to satisfy. Right. So that's been something that, when people come to me, and I'm sure, when they come to you as well, like it's so much easier to relate to that because you get it, right? You're not someone that's just never been in that position before where you're like, sorry, dude, like just have more discipline, just stop. It's not that easy. Like there's so many psychological factors happening. I mean, I've actually seen eating therapists, for like binge eating and, because it's something I've struggled with in my past, and I think people a lot of times go the other direction too, right? They want to lose weight. So what do? Like they severely restrict their calories and then they just go crazy with exercise, which creates, a whole other issue of problems with deficiencies. And now they're, they end up binge eating because they're, like under or over restricting themselves so much. So I think balance is like a really big part of this, right? So when you started, right? So you went from being, almost 270 pounds, right? And you started your journey all the way back. How did you stay motivated and like just have the momentum to keep it going? Because, losing
Yeah.
20 pounds is like, okay, someone could lose 20 pounds in, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right? But it's like
Yeah.
when you got 70 pounds to 100 pounds to lose, like how do you stay motivated and like stay on track, without getting
Yeah.
discouraged?
Yeah. Obviously my journey of losing weight is different than your average person who's gained weight over the years. Like I did in 6 months what people tend to do over 6+ years of their life. Like they slowly gain the weight, life happens, they have kids, they have bills, they get stressed out, and then they end up gaining the weight in their 30s, 40s, 50s, right? So to lose that amount of weight in 6 months was like, okay, I got to be strict, I have to be on point. Like it's just the way the journey goes. The motivation part came actually from the accountability to my followers and people doing this journey with me, because I was like, okay, I'm going to put my meal plans out there, my workouts, for people to do this with me, in hopes that we'll do this together. Because if I have this weight to lose regardless, and I'm sure lots of people out there have weight to lose, why not do it together? And so for me, the motivation came from the accountability to my followers, because there was times where I was in the grocery store and, like, for example, cinnamon toast crunch was my like jam. I was like, oh, like I could eat this twice a day, morning and night, and never complain about it, right? And there's times where I was in the grocery store, I'm like, man, that would taste so good right now, especially you're like in a caloric deficit, you're cutting, those things like pop up. You're like, man, that would taste so good right now because I can't have it. And so, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's probably people here in this grocery store, like when I was living in Utah, who might recognize me and might be like, hey, you're the Fit to Fat to Fit guy, aren't you? Like, I thought you were doing your journey back to fit. Why do you have Cinnamon Toast Crunch in your shopping cart? So I was like, okay, if there's people out there doing this journey, like, which I knew there's thousands of people doing it, I can do it too. And that's kind of what helped motivate me. Now, how does that translate to your average person? Staying accountable to someone, whether it's a coach, a personal trainer, a sibling, a spouse, a friend, someone that is doing this journey with you. Because I think if you do it by yourself, yeah, it's possible if you have the discipline to stay consistent. But doing it with someone, friends, family, a community, makes it seem like you're not alone in the struggle. And as humans struggling with other people, it brings, motivation, I think, naturally comes from that. And so staying accountable, and nowadays with social media, there's so many apps and platforms, and we can gamify it almost, where we're doing these journeys with other people, is important. You just have to realize that, investing in your health, whether you pay for a personal trainer or a coach, is going to be worth it for you in the end, because you're staying accountable to someone, and having that accountability, even for me, helped me stay motivated. Because yeah, man, I had those cravings and I still do, 10 years later, still have those cravings where I'm like, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is so good. But
I always say, like, accountability creates responsibility, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty open about the fact, like, I still have a coach that I work with who I'm accountable to.
Awesome.
Because, again, like, fitness is, it's extremely important to me. And I know myself, like, I know where I'm weak, I know where I'm strong, and I know where I'm most likely to fall off, right? So if I have that coach there that I have to check in with every week and send him my photos and send him my weight and have someone to answer to, like, the odds of you falling off track is going to be, a lot less likely, right? Especially if you're throwing it on social media too and saying, hey guys, I'm doing this, like, if you start slipping up, people are going to start calling you out on it, to where, the odds of you going off track is going to be highly unlikely, right? Okay, so the journey back. So how long did it take you to finally, like, complete the entire transformation and get to where you were when you started?
Yeah, 6 months. 6 months of gaining,
Okay.
6 months of losing. That's kind of the time frame I gave myself, and I was able to accomplish that task, luckily.
Okay.
But losing 75 pounds in 6 months was freaking hard, but I was able to accomplish that.
So what did the process look like, as far as, like, from a nutrition standpoint, and then we'll talk about the training, but I guess let's start with the nutrition, because I know, you're really big on keto, right?
Yeah.
So is that the method you used when you did it back in 2011 as well?
No, I did not. In 2011, keto was not very mainstream in the fitness industry. Wasn't as well known. So my approach back then was more of a paleo-ish approach, with like 5 small meals per day, every few hours throughout the day, eating, high protein. I would say it was still lower carb. It wasn't like high carb, but I definitely kept my fat pretty low. And that's kind of the strategy I used back then. around 2000 calories is what I estimated my calories to be back then. I wasn't really on point with tracking back then. I don't even think my Fitness Pal was around back
I was gonna
then.
say,
But
I don't
anyways,
think my Fitness Pal has only been around for like 5 years or 6 years now.
yeah. So anyways, that was my estimate. And then as far as training goes, it was pretty simple. A lot of people thought that I was gonna live in the gym for 5 hours a day. I wanted to show people like, look, you don't need to do anything super extreme to get, these type of results. And so what I did is I worked out 5 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were resistance training days, which was mostly superset, right? So chest and back, legs and shoulders, biceps, tries. And then Tuesdays, Thursdays were high intensity, interval cardio days. So, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, like kind of routine for like 20, 30 minutes. And then I increased those times. I increased the weights throughout the journeys, but my workouts were about 45 minutes long at the longest. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesdays, Thursdays were like 30 minutes of cardio, and then Saturday, Sunday I took off because I'm a dad. I was back then I was married. I'm not married anymore, but I had 2 young daughters. They're older now, obviously, and so I had life to do. I still had other responsibilities. I had a full-time job in the medical field that people don't know about during this time. It wasn't like I was a full-time personal trainer.
I didn't know that either. I thought you were only personal training.
Yeah, no, I personal trained part-time, but I had my full-time job in the medical field.
Oh, wow.
And then actually stopped taking on clients during this time because I was so busy with media and stuff like that. I didn't have time to train people. Yeah. So yeah, my main income was the job in the medical field. So yeah, I didn't want to show people like, hey, to get these results, you got to work out 3 times a day. You got to eat 1,000 calories. Like, I want to show people it's a sustainable lifestyle. It doesn't have to be super extreme. It doesn't have to be this extreme thing that you think it is.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%, man. I think the problem, again, like when people want to start their own journey, they almost do too much too soon, right? And it's like one thing I truly believe is like long-term consistency will always trump like short-term intensity, right? So the guy that's going to the gym, like the guy that's going to the gym twice a day and like severely under eating, maybe he could keep that up for 3 days or even a week, right? But it's like when the weekend comes, the odds of him falling off and going the other way is going to be a lot more likely versus someone that's maybe working out 4 to 5 days per week. They're in a moderate calorie deficit and they're losing weight at a consistent rate. Like they're going to reach their goal a lot quicker than the guy that's trying to do it overnight, right? Like one thing my coach always told me, he's like, slow is fast. I'm like, what does that mean? Like that makes zero sense, right? He's like, but think about it. If you just approach this in a slow manner, a consistent manner, like you're going to reach your goal a lot faster than the guy that's trying to do this fast because he's going to keep tripping over himself and falling short. And, maybe he loses a little bit of weight, but eventually he's going to gain weight, right? So it's like, find something that you could be consistent with. Find something you could, ultimately live out for the rest of your life and that you love doing. Because if not, one thing I always tell people, it's like, if you can't see yourself doing this for the rest of your life, like, then what's the point, right? Like, what's the point if you get in shape and you look great, but then after you go through your transformation, like you kind of slip back into your old habits and ways, right? So tell us, I'm really curious. So how did you decide to kind of start doing keto and decide that was the path for you?
That happened around 2015. I kind of stumbled upon it, listened to some podcasts with this doctor named Dr. Dominic D'Agostino. He was on the Tim Ferriss podcast, I think, and listened to all the science behind the ketogenic diet outside of weight loss and fat loss that was being done. I had no idea there was all these studies being done with keto and epilepsy and seizures and what are they else? Traumatic brain injury and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all these other scientific studies that had been done on the ketogenic diet. I'm like, I had no idea that, first of all, a diet could do that. So I was really intrigued by the science that he presented. And then I was like, okay, maybe there's something I'm going to experiment with. And so kind of I did my research to figure out how to do a keto diet the correct way. And back then there wasn't a lot of, there wasn't a lot of books or podcasts about it necessarily. So I did my research, did my own 60-day experiment. Felt freaking amazing. My brain, this is the biggest thing with keto that I tell people is like, there's a million ways to lose weight. Keto is one of those ways. Like there's a million ways to lose weight. The thing with keto that I fell in love with was how different my mental clarity was. It was like night and day, where my mental clarity was through the roof. My brain felt so sharp and so clear and so focused and so much energy mentally all day long. That's what I loved about the ketogenic diet. I didn't really change my body composition. It stayed about the same.
Mm.
I did notice that I didn't have to eat as often. So I went from eating 5, 6 meals a day to eating twice a day. And so my digestion improved. My digestion was a lot better. My mind was a lot clearer. And I didn't feel like a slave to food anymore, where I could eat once or twice a day and still feel pretty, satiated. And my performance in the gym, in the beginning struggled a little bit, I'll be honest with you, just because switching from carbs to fats takes your body time to get acclimated to that new fuel source. And so then I was like, man, this is great. I love it. And so I started, I actually got connected somehow to go on the Dr. Oz show, presenting or talking about the ketogenic diet as a tool. And then from there, got another book deal to write a book about the ketogenic diet. And then, became a proponent of it. I'm not a keto zealot where I think this is the only way that works for every single person, and that everyone else that doesn't do keto is wrong. Like I said, it's a tool in your tool belt. I think it's great because if you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, our society, we don't really tap into ketosis unless we're forced to fast. Like we didn't even know what ketosis was, but our ancestors, this is how our species evolved. If we didn't have this backup system known as ketosis, we wouldn't be able to survive 2, 3, 4, 5 days plus, like weeks or even, without food, if we didn't have, ketosis as this backup system where we can burn fat as fuel, our own stored body fat as energy. And so, it's always been around. Now, in the 1920s, they discovered that this approach was great for children with epilepsy because it reduced their seizures, it reduced inflammation in the brain. And it started being studied for those purposes. But then, it didn't become mainstream in the fitness industry until I would say the past 10 years or so, where it's like, oh, this is a dietary protocol where if you eat high fat, moderate protein, low carb, you could, switch your fuel source and burn fat as fuel. And yes, it can be an effective tool for weight loss, but there's a lot of other health benefits to the ketogenic diet that I talk about and that I, tell people about. Is it a one size fits all approach? No. And there is no dietary protocol that's a one size fits all approach, but I think it's good for us in our generation, our society, that now the era we live in, to get away from the processed carbohydrates that we're addicted to, that we've been force fed in the 70s and 80s, to say, hey, maybe let's take a break and actually use this metabolic state that we don't really tap into ever anymore because food is so accessible, and see how our bodies and our minds feel in a ketogenic state. Because people think it's just a diet. It's a metabolic state that is you're shifting from one fuel source to a completely different fuel source, and it feels different for your brain, the way you function. And so I think it's great to learn how to do it the right way. There's a lot of misconceptions, there's a lot of myths about it. And, I just want to teach people how to do it in the healthiest way possible.
Yeah. So that's awesome. I've done keto in the past. Like I've had great success with it. And even I have some clients that I have do keto because they actually prefer it. Right. And again, I feel the same as you. I'm like, listen, if you want to do keto and if you could see yourself doing it for a long time, then dude, I fully support that. Right. Like I'm not against it. Again, I think people just have to find what works best for them. I mean, even myself, during the week, I find myself eating higher protein, higher fat, almost no carbs, let's say 3-4 days in a row. And then every 4th or 5th day, when I feel like my energy is a little low and, maybe my pumps in the gym aren't that good, then I'll have a nice, carb day. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a, keto cycling, carb cycling, I guess you can call it. But like I said, listen, people have to find what works best for them. Like you said, there is no one size fits all formula. And one thing I can't stand, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is when people just say no, this is the only way. This is the only way to do it, right? Because I mean, listen, every human body, every body is different. I mean, so certain things that might work great for someone, might not work great for someone else. Do you do intermittent fasting as well?
Yeah, I think intermittent fasting and keto kind of go hand in hand, to be honest with you. I don't, I cycle in and out of the intermittent fasting where I do a true intermittent fast. And other times I'll do a fast with fat coffee, or right now, currently I'm doing protein in my coffee, collagen and whey protein in my coffee first thing in the morning. It's not a true intermittent fast, but I cycle in and out where I try not to do the same protocol day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year of like never changing it up. Now I'm kind of doing 3 meals a day, kind of like you. I'm doing higher protein, still in the lower carb range, but probably not strict keto.
Yeah.
And I like to cycle, in and out of these phases where I'm doing like one type of protocol. Intermittent fasting I love because, like I said, the quickest way to get into ketosis is to stop eating food. If you want to get into ketosis quickly, just stop eating and you'll get in. So intermittent fasting, you're already in a mild state of ketosis because you haven't eaten for 8 hours of sleep, right? And if you extend that for another 4 hours, now you're making even more ketones because your body's like, okay, there's no glucose available. Let's start making some type of fuel source. Here's the ketones now that are coming in. And then if you eat keto lunch and dinner, then you're kind of, stay in ketosis throughout the day. And then you do that when I tell people to do keto, I highly, highly, highly recommend to get keto adapted minimum 30 days, strict keto, consistent, no cheat meals, because your body needs time to adapt to this new fuel source. It's not going to switch over day one where you eat keto for one day and then you're like, oh, this feels amazing. Most people are going to feel like crap because your body's like not knowing what's going on. Like, where's our glucose? Where's this drug that we've had? Like, it's such a efficient fuel source that your body burns through so quickly. It takes time. So give yourself 30 days, get keto adapted first and foremost, and then cycle in and out of ketosis, what I tell people. But I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting, extended fasting. I've done, upwards of 7 days, which is a long fast for me. Like I don't think I'll do more than that, but 3 days, 4 days is where I've felt optimal, but I'll do that like once a year.
Yeah. I mean, I think for intermittent fasting and even keto as well, there's kind of like an adaptation period, right? I mean, they call it like the keto flu, the first 3 to 5 days. I mean, for some people, it's longer. But what I try to explain to people is, even people that are new to intermittent fasting, it's like, listen, your entire life you've been waking up and having breakfast every morning. I mean, most cases it's probably like a high sugary cereal or something like that, which is like the worst thing to put in your body first thing in the morning. So you've trained your body essentially when to be hungry, right? It's called hunger signaling. So the first 3 days when you're no longer, having breakfast first thing when you wake up, it's like, yeah, you're going to be hungry because your body is like, dude, what's going on? For the past 30 years, we've been eating everything. Like, now we're not, right? But once you break past that, after the first, 3-4 days, the body adapts pretty quickly. The same thing with keto. You start producing more ketones, you become fat adapted, and then your body's like, all right, we're doing it. Now we're running up ketones instead of glucose. So yeah, I think that's really important for people to realize. Like, if you do want to try keto or try intermittent fasting, just give yourself some grace. There's going to be like a short adaptation period, with it. Another thing I love about you, man, is you've allowed this to become a lifestyle, right? So I love that you say you only eat twice a day, because that's pretty much me as well. I'll eat 2 to 3 times per day. I used to be huge into bodybuilding, like when I was 18 years old. After I lost all my weight, I was obsessed. I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder. So I was obsessed with the gym, eating 6 times per day, drinking my shakes after the gym. And unfortunately, that thought process still sticks with a lot of people. Like, a lot of people I talk with today, they still feel that they need to eat 6 small meals a day, in order to burn fat and keep their metabolism running, which simply isn't the case, right? So how would you explain to someone, as far as just, do what works best for you, your work day, your lifestyle? You don't have to eat 6 times per day, right? Ultimately, it's a calorie equation. If you're burning more calories than you're consuming, then you could divvy up and split up your meals however you want. If you want to do keto, if you want to do more, flexible approach, people have to learn how to make it fit best with their lifestyle, right?
Yeah. I think it's important for people to I look at it through a lens of curiosity. Look at this as an experimentation with your own body. Okay, what can this experiment, what can I learn from this experiment? I'm going to do maybe some tests here and there, maybe capture some data, do some measurements, and figure out what is really optimal for my body. Because if you don't do that and you're just going off of what this trainer, this doctor, this person is telling you to do, you're just kind of like a leaf blowing in the wind. What I recommend for people when they do these experiments is, like we mentioned before, give your body time to adapt. Whatever experiment you're doing, give it a minimum of 30 days. Don't just do it for a few days and be like, oh man, that keto flu really kicked my butt. Keto is not for me. It's like, well, did you really give it more than a week, time to allow your body time to adjust? If you didn't, then you're probably doing your body a disservice. But capture some data, don't just use the scale weight, maybe do some body composition tests, maybe do some blood work, do some measurements, go off of how you feel, how your clothes fit, how your performance in the gym is, and then maybe document that. It doesn't have to be this new full-time job, but there's podcasts available and books on Audible, and there's ways to get access to the information in a quick way where you do your research, and then from there you come up with a plan and you execute that plan. You stay accountable to someone. Yep. And then from there, kind of like assess how you feel and how it went, and you're like, okay, that definitely didn't work. You learn something from that, right? Come out at it from a place of curiosity. And I feel like if you do that, you'll develop a better relationship with your body. You'll develop a better relationship with living a healthy lifestyle. The problem is we go into it thinking it's going to suck. It's going to be hard. Yeah, it can be. But if that's all you focus on, then you're probably not going to get a whole lot out of it. But that's the problem that I think people have with the fitness industry. Is like, oh, I have to reduce calories. I have to work out. It's going to be miserable. And I'll do it for 30 days to look this way for the wedding. But then I'm going back to my old ways. And I think that's the problem that people have, is their perception of what a healthy lifestyle is supposed to look like. They think it's this extreme, horrible thing that just sucks, right? It doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. It's learning how to shift your perception. And this is why I'm such a big proponent of talking about the mental and emotional side of transformation. We focus on the physical side so much in the fitness industry because that's what makes money. That's what sells, right? But the mental and emotional stuff is really what people struggle with. It's not so much the physical, the access to the physical formula of eating less calories and working out. Like I said, there's a million ways to do that. And so the mental and emotional hurdles are what keep people from living that healthy lifestyle consistently. Yeah. And so that's why I'm a big proponent of helping people through those mental and emotional hurdles so that their perception changes. And when their perception changes, their awareness is different. And now they're more in control of their lifestyle as they become more self-aware. And that's the biggest key that I see. How do you do that? There's lots of ways: therapy, meditation, journaling. Like there's all kinds of things you could do along the way to become more self-aware and understand what your mental and emotional hurdles are, so that as you overcome them, then the physical lifestyle, the physical stuff becomes so much easier once you understand that stuff first. But if you just go into it like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, just tell me exactly what to eat and how to work out, it's probably going to be short-lived for most people, because at some point the emotions, the stress of life is going to come up, and then you're going to have to deal with it eventually at some point.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I mean, even like when times in my life when I was sitting down like with my therapist, and she was like, so why do you think you're self-sabotaging with food, right? You know that you shouldn't be doing it, but you keep doing it. So why do you think that is? And the deeper we started digging and I started really evaluating myself, I'm like, you know what? I just don't think I'm good enough to ever, look a certain way or feel a certain way. I feel like I'm not worthy for whatever reason. Maybe because I was picked on as a kid, maybe because I was bullied, and that was just like so well ingrained in my psyche, and I wasn't even aware of it, right? But once you start really like taking time to evaluate why you're doing certain things and why you're self-sabotaging and why you're, emotionally eating, it's a lot easier to work through those things and really start a healthy journey, not just to looking better and feeling better, but also just like positive self-image too, right? I think that's a really important part. Changing your perspective is everything. I couldn't agree more. One thing I always tell people, I'm like, listen, you don't have to do this. Like, you don't have to go on a diet. You don't have to eat better. You don't have to go to the gym. You get to do these things, right? Like there are people all over the world that are extremely, in a lot less fortunate situations than we are here in America, who just have to struggle to find food every single day to survive, right? So the fact that you have the luxury of being able to go to a gym every day and eat less food because you're choosing to eat less food, like, that in itself is a real blessing. And I think once you make that like mindset shift, like, you know what, life isn't that bad. Like I'm actually very fortunate in the fact that I get to live a healthy lifestyle, like is a luxury that is afforded, to not everyone in the world. Right. Yeah. Drew, so share with people what's next on the agenda, man. What's coming up?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I just finished my second Fit to Fat to Fit journey back in May of this year. So just a few months ago, where I gained 62 pounds this time as a 40-year-old, and documented that whole journey. And so that was, doing it a second time was way harder than I thought it was going to be, even though I thought before that I did it the second time, like, oh, I've done this before. I know how to do this. Like, The second time was way harder than I thought it was going to be. One, I'm older. Two, just in a different place in life. Like my daughters were older, and I went through a divorce, and then had a girlfriend, went through a breakup during the journey. It was a lot of stress. So right now, I just recently relocated to Hawaii. That's where I live now. Still getting settled in. I don't have any crazy self experiments coming up just yet, but 2022's on the horizon. Got some things planned, but right now I'm just getting settled in, and I'm like, taking a break from extreme stuff, because also I ran 100 miles in less than 24 hours for the first time ever, just a few months before I did Fit to Fat to Fit the second time. And so like 2020 was a really stressful year. 2021 has been, obviously a lot of changes for me personally. And so we'll see what's on the horizon as far as self experiments. Just to put it out there, I don't foresee myself doing Fit to Fat to Fit again. Twice was enough, but you know what? I didn't think I would ever do it a second time. So never say never, but I don't foresee it happening. So anyways,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, dude, you've been a huge, again, like a huge positive inspiration in the fitness industry, a breath of fresh air. It's been a really, awesome privilege to talk to you and, hear more about your journey from yourself. Because like you said, there's been a lot of media attention around, your story. And it's always good to hear it, right from the source, right? So really appreciate you, man. I'm going to be tagging all of your contact information so people can go follow you on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of that good stuff. Everyone go get his book. It is amazing. Drew, I can't thank you enough, man. Awesome time talking to you, brother.
Yeah, I had a great time too. Thank you so much.
Awesome, man.
See you guys.